Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon or good evening, depending on what part of the world you're in. My name is Valerie Hope, and I want to welcome you to Time to Come Alive. This weekly conversation is an opportunity, as some of you already know, to, first of all, become more conscious of something special or interesting or important in your own life, so that then you're able to better connect with other people and therefore create something of value in your life or in this planet. And I'm so grateful that every week I have an amazing person that I can talk to about some fantastic and interesting subject, and today is no different. And in just a moment, I will introduce my special guest. But in the meantime, if you're logged on, if you're live with us today, if you're on Facebook Live or social media, please post that you are watching and experiencing Time to Come Alive. This will be an opportunity for you to have some great conversation with your family, your friends, your colleagues. It'll be an opportunity for them to come in and also understand maybe a different perspective about our topic for the day. And as we get started, I'd like to always begin with a little mindfulness. And the mindfulness exercise has two purposes. One of them is to get us focused for this experience, this conversation that we're about to have. But then more importantly is to prepare us to listen for the conversation that we're about to have, or to prepare our listening so that we're able to engage more deeply. So in order to do that, I'll just ask you to sit comfortably or wherever you're standing. You might want to plant your feet. You're grounded. And it might be helpful if you either close your eyes or you soften your gaze. Just start with just taking a couple of deep breaths, deep cleansing breaths. I want you to really think about for yourself today where you are and what you're doing. Where in your life, any area of your life, are you trying to look good for others? Or perhaps even seek approval of other people. Just notice it. Don't judge it. Don't assess it. Don't evaluate it. Just notice where that might be. Maybe there's a relationship or a special situation or an environment. Notice where you might avoid looking bad in front of other people. Perhaps avoiding actively feeling judged or avoiding taking on blame, and how you manage in those situations or how you manage those relationships. Take a deep breath, just notice it. Notice the energy that it carries when you live in that way. And now I want you to yourself, repeat this affirmation. I'll read the affirmation out loud, and in your own mind, I want you to repeat it for yourself. May I continue to look deeply into my mind, my heart, and body. May I see things and meet things as they are. And may this clear and sustained knowing free me for the sake of all beings. I'm going to say that one more time. May I continue to look deeply into my mind, my heart, and body. May I see things and meet things as they are. And may this clear and sustained knowing free me for the sake of all beings. All right. Now take another deep breath. You may refocus your gaze or open your eyes. Welcome back. All right, and nudge your partner if they fall asleep. Okay, now I would like to introduce my special guest. Her name is Amber Hill. I'm going to unmute you there, Amber. And I just want to say a couple things about her. So Amber and I met a year ago, a little over a year ago. And the reason for our meeting is because at the time, Amber's supervisor knew that Amber needed some additional support in the role that she was taking on, and brought me in to help her figure out some ways in which she could organize herself in that role. So Amber and I began our coaching relationship a year ago. We've been working for a whole year. And I think one of the things that I really was struck with in working with you, Amber, is your willingness to take on a challenge. Sometimes it's not comfortable.
Yep.
And there were moments where I had to ask you questions or ask you to do something in an assignment that you were like, Valerie, oh my
No.
God. What are you doing to me? And what I just admire so much about you was your willingness. I mean, we talk about it. You reflect to me, okay, yeah, this is hard. I'm not sure. We work through it. And then we've moved on. And one of the most courageous people I know. And it was in conversation. It's not like we're jumping out of planes and
no planes.
Yeah. No. But I will say that it creates some of the same tension for some
it's true.
on the things that we worked on. So welcome, Amber. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Well, Valerie, I'm so pumped to be here with you.
Me too.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I first wanted to start off by asking you, this is probably no different than why we were working together in the first place, but why did you say yes to being on this public forum to talk about some of your transformation, especially about being vulnerable? Why did you say
Well, I think that, especially when you say the word vulnerability, I think that it is beginning to come to the forefront for people, especially with like Brene Brown, and she's on Netflix and she has all these books. And so people are starting to go, oh, this vulnerability thing, this can play into all parts of my life. What is this? So starting to become more open to it. But even when you talk about it in the workplace and you say the word vulnerability, the general response is, huh? What? I don't speak that language. What do you mean? Like, what are we talking about vulnerability? So I have been asked many times by people, professional and personally, hey, this coaching thing you did, what is that? What does that look like? What is that about? So I think that this is going to be a really nice way for people to be able to listen to this, come watch this and go, oh, okay, I have a little snippet of what that was and what that maybe could be for me. Also, I think it's very healthy for me and my own journey of what we walk through and the different milestones. I think it's going to bring about even more saturation and awareness, and probably some areas of application that I've either overlooked or haven't stepped into enough.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
Look at that. You're just up for it. You're always just up for it.
Let's go, Valerie. Let's go. I have my coffee and my water. We're ready.
Well, so let's start with this. So one of the things that I'd like for you to share is, what was it like before we started working together? You'd never worked with a coach before, right?
No.
Right. So what was it like for you to begin that process of opening up and sharing some things with a virtual stranger? Because outside of the fact that Lisa introduced us, that was pretty much all you knew. We had a phone call before we actually met in person.
Yes.
And that was it. So what was it like to start opening up that way?
I think there were also, this is why it's the importance of relationship, because there were, two people that we mutually know, and they were very, very, very affirming of doing something like this. Like, hey, I think that this could be really good for you. Valerie is this kind of a person and brings about these kind of results. And so if you're willing, I think it can be very beneficial. So whenever there's that, I'm a big person on equity and relational equity. So when I have people that I respect go, this has my vote, I'm already more open to it. But even then, especially more of a professional setting, that adjustment that you have to make in your heart and in your mind of, I'm not coming in here, like you said, to look good, to look a certain way. If anything, I have to look not so good. So that I can actually hear what I need, help, support, guidance, or even a challenge like, I think you're off there. And let's talk about that. Let's talk about why. But it also reminds me, growing up, my mom, who was the wisest person I've ever known. She would tell me from young, and I wouldn't even fully get it until I got older. She'd say, Ambi, no one lies to you more than yourself. So keep people near to you who love you enough to tell you when they think that you're not on the mark.
Wow, no one lies to you more than yourself.
And she is right. Oh man, there are times where I was like, Amber, where did you come up with that? That is not even true. But it will take other people who know you, love you, for you, whether that's personal or professional, to go, I care about you enough to say that you might be off.
Mm. Oh, wonderful. Okay, so I'm curious, what were some of the things that you discovered in this process of peeling back that layer where you may have made an assumption about yourself that perhaps was challenged?
I think one of the biggest things was realizing that I will revert to non-feeling words. I will go into how it affects other people, how it affects operation. But when you say, okay, well, what about you and where you are and how you feel? I mean, you would have to say to me regularly, Amber, that's not a feeling word. I'm asking you how you're feeling. And you literally had to send me a feelings word list for me to be able to go, it's that one. That's the word I'm feeling. And that one.
I have the list right here.
There it is. I've even said that to a couple of people. I'm like, that's not a feeling word. Those aren't feeling words. So let's talk about that. And I still have to reference it. Be like, what do I feel right now? Because I think feelings have been demonized. It's where don't be too emotional. Don't feel so much. Don't make such a big deal out of it. Stay objective, stay logical. Logic and objectivity can hold hands with your feelings. Feelings can help inform you in where you really are so that you can unpack those feelings and then actually use your logic with something that's sustainable, not just this is what's needed right now, but thinking maybe more long-term. What are the possible implications of this on me, on the people around me? So it's really begun to give me, I still have much more, as you know, to unpack there, but it's begun to give me a little bit more of a framework to go, not just logic and not just strategy, but where are my feelings in this? That's been a big one that has tentacles and everything.
Okay, well, let's go back to something that you said earlier, right? Like you had a tendency to use non-feeling words.
Yes.
When I say non-feeling words, meaning that it wasn't describing an emotion of some sort.
Correct.
So can you think of an example? First of all, let's talk about why was that such a strong tendency, right, to avoid?
Yeah.
And think of an example where that showed up. Like give us a before and after, if you will.
Okay. So there was a period of time when you were helping me with how to influence relationships more. And there were times when you were helping me unpack what was going on in that relationship, or why was it a challenge? Why are you struggling? And how has this impacted you, which is something you will regularly ask me. What has the impact been on you? I would not go inward. It was, well, this is how it's impacting my work. This is how it's impacting what I feel is impacting my effectiveness. What I think is impacting my effectiveness, not what I feel. Or I would even say that. I would say that regularly. You're like, okay, you're saying you feel that that's impacting this. I'm asking you how it makes you feel. And so it was a kind of a sense or a taste of feeling, but it wasn't. And to be challenged on that, like, no, go back. What do you feel? Okay, well, in this relationship, I feel discouraged. I feel disheartened. And then that opened up the pathway for you to say, okay, now where has that taken you? Or what have you seen that bring about? Where the walls that were up before didn't really make room for that.
Mm. And just to give some people context, you work at a company, right, as the assistant director of training. So
Yes, correct.
part of your job is to really help grow other people. You gotta, you have to be caring, listening, experiencing, influencing on a regular basis. It's not an
Correct.
option. You're not sitting there crunching numbers and doing spreadsheets. You're literally interacting
No.
with the public. And it's a hospitality company. So you're
Yes.
working at the Jewel. We would meet in the environment. Good
Correct.
time too. And when you talked about some of those situations, we're talking about human challenges
Yes.
because your job required you to influence and work with other human beings. So just
Yes.
wanted to give people a context for the
Yeah.
kind of work that you did or you do
That's important.
and why we were working on that. And so tell me, what has been the impact, speaking of,
Yeah.
what has been the impact of identifying and being more connected to the emotion for you?
It has really begun a journey that I think I have much more to do. I don't really think it will stop in this life, but I think I'm at the beginning of it. Is really, really, really validating
What do you mean?
why I feel this way and the impact it has had in my life, personally and professionally. When you are, especially in the hospitality industry, you exist to
Well, let me,
serve. Oh,
I'm going to interrupt you because
yeah.
and we've done this in our coaching sessions. So
Yes.
respectfully, remember to use I versus
Oh,
you.
see, that's so good. Interrupt away. Interrupt away. In the hospitality industry, I exist to serve others and to create an experience for others. In doing that, it can be very fulfilling. But there is a tendency, I have a tendency to overlook, well, where am I at in the journey and in the process of creating and serving others? Let me check in with myself. Um, and that is really because I've been in this industry for 15 years. And when you've been doing that for so long, and it's very rare that you're actually challenged on, okay, but what about you? Where are you at? And having a specific role in an industry that is very, very much for the support of others. Now I'm internally kind of behind the scenes. I was front of house operations, more front desk, banquets. Then I moved into more of the internal support. And when you're internally supporting hundreds of people, it becomes, you don't even think about, I don't even think about, okay, well, where are you at, Amber? How do you feel about where you are? And not where I am as a title. That's not what I'm talking about. Where am I emotionally, mentally, and the health of that? Because you give out, give out, give out, give out, but there also has to be that exchange as well. And we both have an individual that we respect deeply who would tell us this. It's that emotional bank account. And there's debits and there's credits. And this is actually perfect because now I have more of I guess, a structure or a framework to take that credit and debit analogy and go, oh, I can actually bring this home for myself. Where are my
Can you give an
credits and my
example?
debits? So maybe there have been seasons, especially if there is something new that I'm rolling out, or as a company we're rolling out, and I'm specifically in a support department. So there will be these like specific seasons of giving, supporting patients. Um, and at the end of it, it's like, well, I didn't even ask for help in that process. I didn't ask to be seen. I didn't ask to be supported. And that is also something that we've worked on. When you said to me, hey, you're a part of creating the reality that's around you. And having to realize and say out loud, I'm a part of creating the fact that I didn't feel supported. I didn't even ask.
What, so talk about that. What was it about asking for support that was difficult to do?
I think some of it is just my innate person and not asking for help. I'm more of a problem solver, and let's get it done. Everybody has a lot on their plate, so I'm just going to continue on and figure it out. So I think there's some of that. And then you bring in the hospitality elements of we exist to serve others and to create that experience. And there, I think it's ego, ultimately. It's ego. And I could say all day, well, it's only about because I want to serve other people. That's part of it. But there's also the ego of, I don't need help. I don't need your help. I can figure this out. So even though there can be some good intentions, it also has some not so good things. Ego's never good. It just hurts things and hurts people and yourself.
It can. I totally that resonates with me because I grew up that way. You know, I'm one of 4 children. I'm in the middle, but I have 3 brothers. And I was the one that my parents were, Valerie, you're the responsible one. Make sure that this gets done. Make sure. And I innately took on a little bit of leadership, even as a child. I remember my mom would always tell me how they would drop us off at our grandparents' house, you know, to be babysat or whatever, or spend some time with them. And my parents would go off, do whatever. And when they would come back, before they came back, I was already rallying the troops. All right, let's pick up our toys. Let's get your stuff. I'm like, this is Valerie at 6, 6 years old. And she said, no, by the time we were there, you know, the little bag was ready to go with the toys or whatever, clothes or anything that we needed to take back home. And for so many years, because I was that person, I totally get what you're saying is the expectation was that's how I got a lot of attention. That's how I got a lot of responsibility. You know, I got a lot of ego strokes out of it. Being the responsible one, being the one that take care of business. So working alone, doing my own thing, it served me really well. It served me really well for a long period of time. And it wasn't until much later on, I would say the last 15 years or so, that I realized that it's lonely.
Yeah.
That's a lonely way to work. It's a lonely way to live. There was really very little connection, even with my siblings, because I was taking care of things. So really beginning to peel back that self-sufficiency, that, you know, pull myself up out of my straps mentality, that do it yourselfer kind of thing, challenging it, I found that, wow, there's a whole different world in the outside of that where I can ask for help and support and actually create some really phenomenal things, because then people bring in different talents and skills. I totally get what you're saying. It's not an easy jump to make. It's like a muscle, right? It's working out a muscle. So I'm curious, talk to me a little bit about your family life, because I could, you mentioned also that this not only applied in the workplace, but how does your family life or your being in your family life impact you and the way you work?
Yes. So this is also something that probably in the last 1.5 to 2 years, so started a little bit before our coaching sessions, some of this awareness and the realization that there's some things still to unpack from childhood. And that was very much triggered through the coaching sessions as well. And man, why do I not think of my feelings? Why is it so hard for me to identify a feeling word? And I think that the term you use, self-sufficiency, is so accurate. At times I've even referred to it as the idol of self. And self can get you pretty far, but we only achieve so much alone or on our own. And it's the greatness of unity and togetherness and the collective growth, which I think requires individual awareness and growth for the collective growth. But it's not just about the individual. And I would say, like, from a very, very, very young age, there was a lot. Essentially, my parents' marriage was incredibly unhealthy. We were exposed to way too much as younger. I have 2 sisters. They're like my favorite people on the planet, but we were exposed to just way too much of these dynamics in our parents' marriage. They never got divorced. So that just kind of this continued on environment of us living in a lot of uncertainty. We stepped into survival mode and coping mode. My older sister's 2 years older than me. Baby sister's 4 years younger than me. So me and my older sister spent a lot of time just trying to shield my baby sister from the arguments and the fighting. And so there's coping there, and then coping of self, not being able to talk about what was going on in our family life. And so from a young age, probably I can register as early as 10, I just stepped into, well, we have to survive. We have to cope. And part of that meant you put on a mask. And then my mom passed away from cancer when I was 22. So we saw this from about 10, knowing from the age of me at 10 all the way to 22, just incredible dysfunction. And I started working in hotels when I was 15. So you kind of had this
That was not
blending.
even legal age.
I tell you what, now that I know what I know.
We won't reveal anything else beyond that. But
no, yeah, it's so you have the blending of these two worlds happening, where at times for our guests, you have to hold it together. And I think the best way to put that is I have, she's still a leader in my life now, but she was a leader back 12 years ago. And she was telling us that many times you're going to have guests that will come up to you just angry. You don't understand why they're angry, but they are. And that's unavoidable. So think of them like a mirror. They're a mirror that has a lot of cracks that you may not understand. That's easy for you to judge, but there's cracks. You have a choice to either reposition yourself to where you mirror their cracks, or you stand firm in kindness and in respect and hope that they will move and then mirror you. And hopefully your mirror has less cracks than theirs. So it's not from a place of judgment or I'm better, but how am I going to meet this anger? And ultimately it's about kindness. However, even in that analogy, it can go too far. And I would take it too far. So I have all these dynamics happening in my family, and then I have these dynamics happening at work. And it's, okay, kindness. Think of the other person. What do they need? And that can, again, it can be good because kindness and laying yourself down for somebody else is always a beautiful thing. But if it's at the total expense of your own heart, it's not healthy and it's not sustainable.
Wow. I have a couple more questions, but in the meantime, I want to ask those that are logged on and listening to this conversation live, please feel free to use the chat to write any comments, what you're getting out of the conversation so far, or what questions you have about what we're talking about, or something that you'd like to introduce into this conversation. If you're on the phone, in a moment, I'm going to ask you all too, if you want to participate, you can unmute yourself on the phone or use *9 and going to raise your hand. That way I'll call on you, know to call on you. There's a little hand icon if you're on Zoom with us. So start thinking of your comments and questions in the meantime. All right, so Amber, I want you to talk through, because it's one thing, right, for us to identify where we might be feeling a certain way, how we might be projecting or reflecting somebody's emotions. And now that you started to see the value of connecting to yourself this way, I'm curious about what's been the impact in your family or with your colleagues at work as you've begun to express things that perhaps in the past they weren't used to seeing.
Yes. I think it's important to note for people who, if you are in this journey, if you want to start this journey, that you're going to be, you've seen Bambi when he's kind of on the ice. You've never seen Bambi, Valerie.
I've never seen anything.
Oh, okay. Baby deer on the ice.
Okay.
You're like, it's everything. You just feel a little awkward. You're trying to get from point A to point B. It could be,
You?
yes. Where, I would feel awkward and feeling like a little baby deer on the ice. But it's worth it to keep going. And it's worth it to keep trying. And you will, because I did fall down, but I think that that's part of any true growth. You have to be uncomfortable. So I think, because we had a few exercises where part of my homework was to do this with certain people I was in regular touch points, regular relationships with at work. And I think that referencing the nonviolent communication method is helpful, because that helped me to remove some of the clumsiness from stepping into more of this direct, vulnerable conversations.
I'd love for you, and I know you're being really respectful of your colleagues by not mentioning names. And I'm sure there's a few of them that may not want to be mentioned, but I think to give our listeners some context, if you could paint a picture, like an actual conversation that took place, or a way in which you approached the conversation after learning some of it.
I think a good one would be when I, through our conversations, realized that I needed to apologize to one of my coworkers, who was actually one of my leaders. And through our conversation.
Why did you need to apologize? And then how did you approach it?
So through our conversations, realized that, I'm all fired up. I'm just upset. Like, why are they not doing this? This is my expectation. They're letting me down. They're letting the organization down. Okay, maybe some of those elements were true. But in our conversations, you helped me to realize that I was being judgmental, and that there were things that I probably wasn't aware of, and that I'd never given this person the opportunity to even hear it, to respond, to maybe give some context. So I in a one-on-one that I had with this individual, I just kind of jumped onto the ice. I said, listen, I need to apologize to you because I've been judging you. And I perceived A, B, and C. I perceived that you should have stepped into your role in this way and brought this kind of support. This is what I saw, which felt like the opposite. And because of those two pieces, or those things combining, I feel like this has been the result, which has been letdown, disappointment, lack of efficiency in our operation, fill in the blank. And I've realized through these coaching sessions, because they were aware that I was in these sessions, I've realized through these coaching sessions that that I've judged you, and that it's wrong, and that I haven't even given you the opportunity to talk to me about this, to give me feedback. And even if you don't want to give me insight, even if you don't want to give me any feedback, it was wrong, and I'm sorry. And that was a little scary, especially because it was like a boss, like a boss way up there. But I knew that if they are not a person who is willing to hear an apology, who wants to hear an apology, then it might not be the kind of relationship that I thought it was. And they were incredibly gracious and so kind. It actually made me cry during it. I guess you should say tear up, not cry, but I teared up because I was so moved at seeing this play out, so moved at seeing me get out of my own way. Because what does judgment do? It doesn't bring any value. And they were so gracious, immediately responded with, you know what, sometimes I've been questioning myself, and sometimes I've been judging myself, and realizing just how much they've been trying and just how difficult it is to make that step into a new role, and how many expectations are placed on you by others. And perception's reality. It doesn't always mean that it's true.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's really brilliant. And I remember how challenging it was, because we don't often want to look at our role, right? And how we
Yes.
did to what's happening, or how we're
Mm-hmm.
judging it as we're trying to protect and defend ourselves. There's fallout. One of the things I've started to redefine, or add, I shouldn't say redefine, but to really explore more deeply this idea of vulnerability. I think what you shared with that particular leader, vulnerability is not just about expressing the emotion, like I'm angry or I'm upset or I'm sad. That's part of it. I think what you also showed vulnerability in is telling him, like, you told on yourself.
Yeah.
you basically
I did this.
You. The vulnerability is as much about sharing your strategy for coping with something. And it can be tough. And it can be really tough. I've had some of those experiences because we're trying to look good, avoid looking bad in certain situations. And what that does, like you said, it brings up the mask. But if we can tell people, this is the mask I'm wearing right now.
Yeah.
And this is why I'm wearing it. I don't feel comfortable. I don't feel safe, or I don't feel supported. And the way I handle it is by pretending that I don't need help.
Yeah.
Or the way I use it is by telling everybody how much of a jerk you are, or whatever your feeling is. So when we tell people that, in that level of authenticity and transparency, that's like a courageous act of vulnerability too. What are your thoughts on that? What are you taking out of that?
I entirely agree. And as you were talking, I'm thinking probably some things that I would have thought a couple of years ago if I was listening in. And that would be, but vulnerability makes you weak. Vulnerability is not something that should be in the workplace. And, or how do you do that? What are the boundaries? What are the limitations? And I think that if you just start small, start with the people that you have that like direct relationship with, whether that's, hey, I need to apologize because of this, or I haven't really asked for help before, and I know that I have made it seem like I have everything together and that I don't need that help, but I do, and this is where I would like to have some help. In reality, and I'm living this right now, you're actually stronger. You're stronger when you do that. I think that sometimes I have heard people say, well, vulnerability, you're just too emotional, too much emotions. You don't have to be an emotional wreck to be vulnerable. You can still come to someone, and you can look poised, you can not look poised, whatever that looks like. It's just actually stepping into the honest conversation. And what you said is exactly it. Here's the mask that I'm wearing, which is a very, very scary thing to do. Because what you're doing is you're handing that person the power to reject you or to embrace you. Or maybe accept you is a better word. And I think that's what we spend our life defending ourselves from.
Oh, yeah.
Rejection.
Yeah. You mentioned the nonviolent communication method. So there's a book called Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg. I've talked about it before. And actually, there's a podcast where I had a facilitator for that particular work on this program. So if you want to check it out, it's about having your needs met.
Yes.
And that's ultimately what it is, right? Getting our needs met. The challenge is we're generally not present, aware, conscious enough of knowing what the need is. Like if we're not conscious of the emotion that we're experiencing.
Yeah.
All these layers
No
upon
idea.
layers. And we just use our rational mind to express our thoughts and ideas. We don't really see, wow, this is an emotion that I have. I'm feeling a little insecure. I'm feeling a little fearful. I'm feeling a little nervous.
Yes.
We can never really request what we need in order to calm the feeling or address that feeling. And
Yes.
I'll say, I shared with you earlier when I had that guest on. Her name is Teresa Doherty. She's amazing. Like I said, I think I'd like to bring her back because I think it was just such a great conversation. But she was the first guest that I had on Time to Come Alive. And I was just exploring this idea of having this podcast. And I was, I'd been up to that point sharing a couple of nuggets of my truth, Valerie style, good ideas. and I remember it was my mother. I have to thank my mother for so many things.
Yeah, oh mama.
Appreciate her. But she was like, why don't you invite someone else? Like have a guest. That might be fun. And I'm like, no, shoot. I can do this myself. I don't need anybody's help. Immediately, I was really like, I was surprised. I actually was not surprised. It was such a notable reaction against engaging someone else in this process.
Yeah.
So on and so forth. That happened. And eventually I was like, okay, if I brought somebody, it would have to be someone that's good. Like somebody that would
be the best.
Yeah. And so I had all of a sudden all of this expectation around this person. And it was beautiful that Terry was the first guest that I had on this program, because when she and I had our prelim, like a little pre-prep conversation, and because she's so gifted at this type of communication where you can identify the feelings and needs, she asked me, Valerie, what are you feeling right now? I've been doing a lot of this work. So I thought, oh, Terry, I thank you for asking that. I didn't realize how nervous I am and how anxious that this go well. And that I feel like I don't have any control anymore because you're on and I can't manage what you say or don't say or how you look or don't look. And how it's not about how I present myself, just, because I know I have supreme control.
Yeah.
If I'm in charge. Now you're in it. And actually, that was probably the best thing for us to have had that conversation before doing this program with her, because I said, I have a need to be proficient at whatever I do. I have a need to provide a service, and I have a need to make sure that the guests and anyone that's on this and that listens to this has a great experience. So she reflected back what she heard, and then I was able to release it.
Wow.
The mere act of being conscious of the emotions that I had, that charge that I had around this area, and then being able to express to her the need behind it. All she did was reflect back what I said. She didn't provide the need. She didn't say, oh, you want this to be a wonderful experience? Here you go.
Right.
She just reflected back. But once I was able to share it, it was almost like, oh, here's the mask.
Yeah, let it go.
I don't need it anymore.
Nope.
Oh, cool. And we had a fantastic conversation. I might even say, I think I even shared that on the podcast. So those of you who are listening, you might want to go back and check it out. That's like Valerie 101.
Like, welcome behind the
like Valerie VH, oh my gosh, VH1.
Oh my, that was good. Yeah, you need to do something with that, Valerie. I like that. That's good stuff.
All right, so I'm actually interested in knowing what others who are on, they're either live on Facebook or perhaps those of you that are here on Zoom. What do you have to say? What questions do you have for Amber? What questions do you have for me? What insights are you getting from this conversation? I see on the Facebook Live that there are some people who totally get it, that they say that that this is about really reflecting or recreating for somebody what they've said. I think sometimes we don't hear ourselves.
Oh, yeah.
Therefore, when someone else is able to reflect it back, it's like, oh, I said that? Oh, I said that.
Uh-huh.
I think those are notable. Good.
Yes.
So what else would you share As we're waiting for people to comment, what else would you share, Amber, that you've seen as an impact of you opening up this way, especially at work? So I think that's where we sometimes have the greatest resistance.
Yes.
Or as a leader, let's call it as a leader. You have the greatest.
I think it's been very freeing because, I mean, masks are, have you ever seen Man in the Iron Mask?
I have, and I don't remember movies
Oh,
well, so
man, that's
don't
okay.
rely
Yeah.
on my movie
I'm gonna
memory.
stop. I'm gonna stop with the.
I may have seen Bambi, but I don't remember.
Oh God, help! So, I mean, masks are constricting.
Yes.
It's hard to breathe. You're not getting like fresh air. It's everything about a mask. It doesn't work. It doesn't serve you. So when I began to free myself in the workplace, and you know what? I know that I'm here and that I'm committed and that I care. I'm not going to hold back more direct, honest conversations and vulnerable moments with people for the sake of a position or placement. It's not worth it. It's not serving me, and it's not serving the people that are around me. And that has been very, very, very freeing. Very freeing. And I can tell in how much I hold and how much I carry. Because I think that we will take a lot of the items that are happening in our work and we'll carry them, like just shoulder them, like, oh, if only this would change, and if we could just do this, and if this person would just listen. And instead, it's taking that weight off and going, I have the opportunity and I have the position, not necessarily in a title, but the position, because I'm just in the workplace, in this environment. I have the position to influence this by this thing or this person by stating something, maybe giving some insight. These are my thoughts. These are my concerns. But I don't have to carry it. What are they going to do with it? Are they going to listen? Are they going to change? And just letting that go. So it's not about apathy. It's just my care should be about care for the other person, not controlling something. And the same way my journey takes my time. Someone could have come to this realization that I'm coming to 5 years ago. I don't have to hold myself to that standard. And I also don't need to judge someone who comes to it 10 years later than me. Everybody has their journey. So but also it's not about apathy. It's not about that. Apathy is, I think, just as detrimental to us as it's another kind of mask.
Yeah, it is. And it's a way for us to cover up the feeling.
Yes.
Sometimes it's for protection.
Yeah.
One thing, and I want to mention one of the questions that came up here from one of our listeners is, can you think of a time where you have opened up, right now that you've experimented and experienced shedding the mask, right, being vulnerable somehow, but the other person did not react in a positive way? That wasn't productive. It wasn't helpful. What can you think of a time when that happened, and how'd you manage it?
Yes, very much so. That is going to be unavoidable. It was so important that I came into that conversation with the awareness of what I was just saying about care and apathy. Because the times that I have come into a conversation where my well-being is based on the outcome of their response, it's never been good for me. That's when I'm like, oh, well, that just threw off my whole day or potentially my week. So when I have truly approached these conversations from a place of, I care about you and I care about what we're trying to accomplish together, I have faced rejection. I have faced minimizing. And I'm not going to lie to you. My ego wants to flare up and be like, excuse me? What was that? But coming into it with that awareness, I can keep that ego like, no, ego, no, you are not on the throne of this conversation. This is about care and kindness. And me choosing to be vulnerable for the sake of influence. But I can't control how they're going to respond. I am responsible for what I believe needs to be said in this moment. And that's all that I can do. Now, again, I'm not going to pretend like it doesn't throw you off or it's not frustrating. But it's almost like you're going, nope, care, you're going to stay right here. Care stays here. And to look beyond their response as well. And I would remember how I have responded when I was a little unhealthier. I'd get a little more defensive. I'd get a little like, oh, let's deflect. So remembering that gives me a little bit of like context and understanding for maybe that's where they are as well in their journey and in their life. And that's not my responsibility to control. The only thing that I can do is respond to them in kindness and, okay, I got it. This is why I was sharing it with you. Fill in the blank, however it is you want to close the loop on that conversation, but not mirroring those cracks.
So it sounds like, first of all, there's a lot of work, inner work that goes into
yes,
just noticing if we're attached. Right? Like you talked about being attached to the outcome, being attached to how they respond. I love that you said that your well-being being dependent on their response.
Yeah.
Right? When you know that's an attachment. And first of all, noticing it, I think is one of the things of being conscious of it. And it sounds like in those moments, if you haven't done the work, though, if you haven't done the work where you can notice that you're attached to it, there definitely would be some fallout. So can you think of a time before you had this clarity about your lack of attachment, or that you're noticing that you had an attachment? Before that, what would you have done if you'd opened up and shared something with someone and they didn't react in the way that you were expecting them to or you needed them to?
I probably would have used my verbal communication to, like my verbal communication skills, because that's been a stronger area in my life, to control the direction of the conversation.
All right, say that like I'm a 10-year-old.
Yes. I would have, this is hard for me, guys. I have a very hard time with this. I would have bullied. I guess that sounds kind of strong, but I think that would be it. Bullied to move the direction of the conversation in the way that I saw fit. Whether that's, all right, we're done with this, or, well, I know you're not seeing it, but. I've done that.
And so for everyone to understand, can you explain this whole idea of speaking to a 10-year-old that they know what I'm...
So hard. So early on in these conversations with Valerie, I would say something just like I did. Oh, my verbal communication skills, blah, 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 blah. And she's like, okay, great. A 10-year-old's not going to understand what you just said. So say that again as if I'm a 10-year-old and you're trying to help me understand this concept, this idea, this situation. And so it is simplifying the words, simplifying the idea, which, as we just saw, kind of made it a little bit easier. Oh, bullied. Okay. Yeah. And it also, I think it's harder for us to simplify it as well, harder for me to simplify it, because it takes it down into more of its basic terms where you have to look at it a little bit more in the eye. You can't, it's not packaged up. You don't have a bow.
That's so true. And I think, and you gave me so many opportunities to work on that, even for myself, because I want to be of service when I coach any of my clients, right? I want to be able to help. But there were times when I felt that the conversation was so up here, it was so intellectual, that it was hard to figure out, like, am I even smart enough to like understand what this person is saying so I can help them? Like they seem to kind of have it figured out. It's very articulate. and it became kind of a game for me to listen. And I don't think I've ever shared this with you because it became a game, not in a game as in I was playing, taking it lightly, but it became a challenge for me to learn to listen closely and to identify what's the emotion behind the tone or the words, or what is it, how am I feeling about how she's expressing herself? So then I could go, I feel a little detached. I feel disengaged. And when I started to notice that, that was my my clue that I needed to look at whatever you're saying in the eye by, okay, if I'm a 10-year-old, and the reason I use it's kind of an arbitrary age, but I do find that when it comes to things that are emotionally difficult, they're emotionally challenging for us, we kind of revert back to a childlike self, right? The inner child gets stirred up. And that inner child is not communicating with verbal fluency. It's like, I want my cereal.
No.
I have 9 nieces and nephews, and I can see that when I start talking to them as if tell us, what are you feeling in the moment? They're not.
Oh yeah, it glazes on over.
Yes. And so I realized in my coaching that I needed, in order to be engaged, to be present, to really be helpful, I had to listen for what was not being said. Yeah. And a lot of times I found that, and I use you as an example because you're in front of me, but this happened with a lot of people that I've coached. This is not unique to Amber. So just wanted to make sure that was clear. Yes. The idea that we use, that I've heard, and I've done it myself, use language to create some separation. Yes. We use it as another mask. Even saying we versus I. Yeah, intellectualize something. Yeah, when I say you, when then when you approach people, and I started to listen for that as well, because then I'm not claiming the words that are coming out of my mouth. They're not I or me, which is why, for those of you who were a little rankled when I said, time out, use I, that was the reason, is because I know, and Amber, you and I have this rapport. Oh, yeah, so I appreciate how gracious you are today, but I realize that our language creates division. Yes. So my challenge to all of you who are listening to this or participating, first of all, thank you all so much for your engagement in this conversation, but I really challenge you, first of all, just to be conscious of it. Yes. Just be conscious of the distance that you might be experiencing because you want to look good, you want to look polished, you want to be prepared, you want to seem competent, right? And not saying that you're not, but consider that there's a little extra something that we put on when we're wanting to appear that way. Yes. It's not that I know I have experience. It's like, I want you to know that I have experience. So I have to amplify something. So just notice when that's showing up, or notice when it's showing up that I don't want them to know that I don't know, or I don't want them to know that I'm feeling so much about this. And that goes for any relationship. So start to notice where that shows up and what it does to the connection with the person. What it does, and what's the impact, the connection that you feel to that person, how honest you feel you can be, how much of the needs are getting met, how articulate you are with how you communicate. All of those things you might see impacted. So, this has just been such a joy, Amber, to have you and share this. It's been wonderful. Any last comments or words that you want to share with everyone before we sign off? I just say don't allow yourself to be so overwhelmed by hearing this that you just get paralyzed and don't take a step. Because it's so worth it. And I'm still in the middle of it. But it's so worth it. And like, oh my God, I can never get there. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. Because if a little girl who learned from 10 on, wear a mask, don't do this, don't do that, you got to survive, you got to cope, which of course is going to play into the workplace, where people see you
They know who you are, but they don't know some of those depths. It's not about being fake or being real. It's how much of your depth are you showing and revealing. It can sound very overwhelming and it can sound really scary, like you don't want to. Just take a step. Just take one step. And even if all you do is just start with that self-awareness of ask yourself after this, well, dang, what do I feel? What have I felt this week? What did I feel in that conversation that I had yesterday that was really uncomfortable? And just make yourself sit in that for a few minutes. I'm still learning how to do that.
Okay. I actually have an additional challenge based on what you just said. Okay. So first of all, be conscious, right? That's the number one thing. I want to challenge everyone when you're asked for the rest of this week, when you're asked, hey, how you doing?
Oh, yes.
Yes. This is classic, right? Because generally we'll say something like, oh, everything's good. Or, oh, good. This is fine or whatever. I want you to just check in, right? When you're asked the question, how you doing? Check in. And then say actually something that's truthful about how you're doing or how you're feeling. I've had it, when I go to a supermarket, and of course the cashier is always very, hi, how was your day? And I'll say something like, oh my gosh, I'm like 30 seconds from a nap. I'm exhausted. And it's so disarming.
What?
Okay. Yeah, me too.
Paper or plastic.
Yeah, but most of the time they kind of get into it. I actually remember the first time I did this, and it sounds kind of silly. I know we're going a little long, but the first time I did it, the person asked me, hey, how are you doing? And I'd been wearing this new pair of boots that I thought looked really cute. So I'd been wearing them a little too long for a new pair, let's just say. My feet were killing me. And here I was trying to strut down the supermarket, getting all my groceries and going, I can't wait to take these. And so when I got to the cash register and the woman asked, she's like, oh, hey, how are you today? I remember having a moment because it was a little game that I played for myself to continue to connect to myself. And I said, my feet are killing me. I think the shoes look cute, but they are painful. So she just, first of all, just kind of looked shocked. And then she busted out laughing. She's like, oh, girl, I totally get that. I've been in that situation too.
Oh, I love that.
And it just made our day, I think, that moment. And so I just challenge everyone to find a small way to connect to yourself and then share it with somebody else. And it could be that simple. How are you doing? And saying, I'm tired. How are you doing? I'm a little frustrated. How are you doing? You know what? I feel really chill right now, relaxed, whatever. I think that's an opportunity for us to connect even further. So, I could talk to you all day, Amber.
I love it. I love it, Valerie.
Next week on Time to Come Alive, I actually have another wonderful person to talk to because there's just so many wonderful people on this earth, and I'm blessed beyond belief to have had so many opportunities to connect with people like Amber. So next week we actually have Grace Vivian, a wonderful friend of mine, and we're going to talk about control. Ooh, yes, this need to control, and you mentioned a lot of that, Amber, today. That need for us to control the outcome, control the conversation, control what we tell people about ourselves, and we'll just explore the subject and see where it goes. I think it'll be fascinating. Grace has been a person that's been working on this for many decades, so she has a lot of experience, and some of the experiences are not quite fleshed out yet, but we're going to discover them together next week. So can't wait to have you all join us again. Amber, once more, thank you so much, dear. I love you. I so appreciate you.
Love you back.
Amazing.
Thank you, Valerie. Stuff. It's been wonderful. Really
cool.
Grateful for you, as always.
Thank you so much. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. See you next week.